I grew up on Locust Street originally. I guess my first place in Jamestown, I was real young. I was born in White Plains, came here at about 2, and we lived on, almost down on at Fifth Street before it hits Second Street, right down there on that right hand, right above the VFW there. I mean, I don't remember the number, I don't remember the house, but my first house was on Locust Street, goes between Forest and Myrtle, right above Newland. The house isn't there anymore, they tore it down, I have no idea why. My parents had it built, so it must have been a terrible house, I guess, I don't know. Somebody needed it for lawn, but, so I lived there until I was 12, and then we moved to the north side on Wilson Place.
Okay. See, I remember you distinctly, Little League Baseball.
Sure.
You were Mr. Montmirail, your dad was intimately involved, I was VFW.
Yep.
And you were really good. And that whole period of time, and I want to share with you, Greg, because you walk with a limp. That's polio,
Polio from when I was 8 months old.
8 months old. So, you know, you work for the assisting those that are developmentally disabled and disability. You lived an entire life with that.
Yeah.
Talk about it.
Yeah, you know, that's not a thing I love to do, but
I know.
I don't know anything else. I have a friend that ended up on the NISH board with me, who was from Frewsburg, Jim Barone. Remember Jim?
Yeah.
Jim Barone and I were in the newspaper in 1956, and flash forward 30 years later, we're both on the NISH board of directors. And we didn't know we were in the paper. And one day my mother says, I got these pictures, do you want one? I looked at it, I said, son of a gun, that's Jim Barone. And John Olson and a couple other people, and I said, it was really hilarious, actually, when we found out. So it's something I always had. It's not like, I used to go to George Lawn, the physical therapist. He was probably the only one in town at that time, maybe, I don't know, but he had all of us polio kids went to George Lawn. And so he worked on you, and nothing really changed. Had a few operations. Bobby Benson, who played for Moose, he and I have the exact same thing. We had polio, and we had the exact same deficits of no ligaments in the front of your leg. And so you can't kick forward. You can swing back and kick forward. So it's just, we both had the exact same thing. And when we were in 8th grade, what was his name? What was the surgeon, lived in Lakewood, orthopedic surgeon, Sidney, doesn't matter. I think he's passed away now. He says, we're going to try an operation on you, and we think it's going to work, but we're going to do a different one on Bob to see if this one will work on Bob. His worked, mine didn't. Bob was, you can remember, Bob didn't have the limp I have. He's better. It just, roll the dice, that's all it was. But, yeah, I just have always had it. It's, I played Little League, I played basketball, I tried to play with the big kids, but once everybody grew up, I couldn't keep up with anybody, in the real deal. I mean, I could play pickup games and all that stuff, but, so, just the way it was.
It's funny, as you watch documentaries, you talk about that time period.
Yeah.
About when polio was really a
Scourge.
tremendous concern.
Yeah.
And yet, when we were growing up as kids, you and Bobby, and pick up baseball, Little League baseball, you never thought anything of it. Nobody ever.
Nope.
You just didn't. It
Yeah.
was just, you did it.
It was different that back then, we rubbed a little dirt on it. That's the mentality my older son uses.
Yeah.
Rub a little dirt on it, walk it off. You'll get over it. And that was the whole era back then, that's the difference. But
Did your mom and dad talk about it at all? How when they got the diagnosis at some point at a very early age?
I don't remember my dad talking about it, to be honest with you. I remember what happened was in August of 50, we were living outside of New York City, just outside of White Plains. How hot it is down there and muggy. And everybody got the flu. Dad, Mom, my older sister Mary Ann, and I. We all got the flu. Mine ended up polio. everybody was sick. And that's how it went around, because it is an influenza. So other than that, my mother said you couldn't keep you down. You were like a monkey all the time, and I broke my collarbone falling out of the crib, and but not really. I mean, I knew I went to doctors, but George Lawn is the one I remember the most. I went to him. I think I went to him at least every month, or maybe even more than that. I don't remember. His office was below Dr. Furlong's office on the corner of Prendergast and 6th Street, right?
Yeah.
6th, yeah. So, no, I don't remember talking much about other than that.
You adapted incredibly well, Greg. I'm not here to blow you up with a glory gun, but you became a tremendous athlete in golf. Everything you've done, you do, and you do it well. And that's a tremendous tribute to it. And I got to believe some of that came from your dad.
Yeah.
Just that motivation. I mean, I knew Bob, as a father figure for us. You want to talk a little bit about him?
Yeah, he, no question, I don't think any of us realized how good he was, number one, until we went through all the records. He was the rub the dirt on it kind of guy too, but that was the era, I think he had obviously great hand-eye coordination. You know that, you have to be that. Baseball players and golfers are blessed with tremendous hand-eye coordination. And I think he did. He had that. He went in the service, so he never went pro because he was too old by the time he got out of the service. He was 27, 28, and starting a family. He couldn't afford to even try. But back then, it was such a select few would make it because there were so few teams, and the realization. But I think he gave that to me, obviously, the hand-eye coordination, because if you think about it, I'm good at golf. I was decent at baseball and softball, ping pong, paddleball, anything with hand-eye. I'm not a great runner. So I tended to stay with the sports that, helped my assets were used for,
Your dad was elected to the Chautauqua Sports Hall of Fame.
Yes, he was. Very
Long
proud.
overdue, but nevertheless, it was well deserved. And much of that came from your mother's scrapbooks.
Yeah, unbelievable. Yeah, we knew they were there, and we had looked at them once in a while. I mean, but when my mother passed away in 2004, we found it, and we had lent it out for Les James.
Right.
His family took it when he wanted to get inducted into the Hall of Fame. Somebody else. Kenny Martin, maybe? I can't remember. A couple people, I used that literally pile for their stuff. My youngest sister is an anal history teacher from Olean. She just put it together just perfectly. She was meticulous, checking dates and there were a lot of conflicts in the writing, but she figured it all out and got it all in a nice, but my mom kept it all. It was pretty impressive. We also found a pile of letters that we didn't know existed. Dad had written to Mom when he was in Pearl Harbor.
Oh.
Now, you want a treat. I mean, that's the thing a book can be made out of. It was crazy, the stuff that he would talk about, and it was your father in a whole different light.
Yeah.
My brown-eyed babe back home, hubba hubba and all. I mean, it was crazy. We never heard Dad say anything like that. And we're just like, whoa. And so Janine did that as well. She took it and put it in chronological order, and you knew what was happening in the war from these letters, but it was redacted too. There was stuff that he would put in that the censors would black out. So it was very cool. But yeah, Mom kept all that stuff. But we really didn't get to put our hands on it until she passed away.
And certainly didn't have a chance to talk to your dad about that stuff.
No, he died in 1970.
That was shocking to me because it seemed like he was such a presence. Had he had a heart attack?
He was one of the early bypass operations at Cleveland Clinic. Back then, they used to give them potential bypass candidates a thorough physical like 6 months before the operation. And then they schedule the operation and they have you on stuff. But he had a physical, passed with flying colors. The morning of the operation, he threw a blood clot. Never made it to the table. And they said it was probably just nerves.
Yeah.
Probably was just nerves. So, yeah, he was 52, pretty young.
Where did he work?
He was steel. Well, it used to be Steel Partition.
Partitions, yeah.
Dowcraft. He worked for Stan Lundeen's father, Elving.
Elving.
Elvin, yeah.
Yeah.
He worked there his entire career. He was brought up by his uncle, my great uncle, to play baseball and work for Steel Partition, get a paycheck to work and get a paycheck to play baseball. He says, he wrote in his letter, I'm in heaven. I'm doing exactly what I want to do. I'm getting paid 2 times for it. He says, yeah, and they went to, first year I think they went to National Amateur Ball in Wichita. They went all over the country playing, but
Oh, they were Steel Partitions were
they were the big boys.
they were the big boys.
Yeah, that's why they ended up being the Bombers, and then they became the Starlight Bombers at the end when the last league, the old restaurant there out on
Right.
Flavanna. Yeah.
Savannah, yeah. Gosh, you're dating us. So give me a little bit about your autobiography. You're a Jamestown High School graduate.
Yes, I am. Went Jamestown High School, went to St. Francis, now it's a university. It was a college back then. 4 years there. Graduated in '71 with a very lucrative Bachelor in History. Don't ask me what I was thinking of. I remember the time the law boards came out, you had to sign up and I think it was $50 to sign up for the law boards to see if you want to go to law school. I didn't have $50. I said, I'll pass. So I probably should have been a lawyer the way I think. And I think that's what I probably would have been decent at. But yeah, this didn't happen. I came back to town and I got into manufacturing. Malbo Iron, AVM for 3 years. From there, I went to AMSCO until it closed. And then when AMSCO closed, you called me to talk to Mike Raymond. Do you remember that?
I do.
Yeah. To talk about the Maddox Stable property.
Yeah.
He was going to put some sort of helmet thing in there. I don't remember.
Harris.
Helmet liner?
Yeah, Harrison Industries, yeah.
Yeah, helmet liner or something. I can't remember exactly. And I didn't know anything about niche or anything then, but it was the precursor to what I ended up doing. That was the thing. So I was I went to Nunday, New York. Worked for Arnie McCone. Remember?
I do, very well.
McCone Tubes, I think, is the name of the company. It wasn't it then, but and then. I worked for Case Cutlery as a production manager in Bradford. And then when I came back here, there wasn't anything right away. Sam Restivo called me and said, we have an opening. Why don't you come down and talk about it? So that's how I got the Resource Center.
So you had a chance to meet Michael.
Yeah.
What was your impression of Michael Raymond?
That's a long time ago, and I met him for an hour and a half or so, but very engaging. Obviously, I don't think type A personality is the right term, but definitely he knew what he wanted. Salesman, very, very, very energetic and proud of what he was trying to do. And I could see how he could get people excited about doing things. That's really the only time I ever met him. I obviously heard all the stories once I started working there, 4 years later or whatever it was. But that's all I can recall.
Now, Allied Industries was alive at the time,
Oh, yeah.
and in the back part of Jones and Gifford, weren't they?
Yeah.
That location?
Yeah, we had, and at the time, I'm trying to think where we had a plant in Dunkirk then. Were they at CESA's then? I guess they were already at CESA's there on Lake Shore. They had been where, at a old grocery store or something, right?
Loblaws.
Yeah. So I guess they had just moved there not too long before I took over. Mary Andrews was running it, and I had met Tom McConnon when I got interviewed, but I think he was gone when I started. And then right after I started, Joe Raccasano started, then Norm Steitler started. We had 3 new people in the business side of things.
What did you know about Allied at the time? So you're Sam's Christiva, who you knew from other relationships.
Yeah, and Clark, I knew Clark.
Yep. And so they kind of thought, here's a talent that's potentially available.
Right.
What kind of pitch did they make to you?
I mean, I don't remember talking about the opportunities of government jobs probably as much. I mean, that's what we would do if we were trying to find somebody once I started, because that was the thing that made us different. But I think the thing that they sold on me on was the security, that nobody's going to come by the resource center. That's what happened at Case Cutlery. New company came in and just shut the place down. Resource center, that's not going to happen. So initially, I had young kids. That was the thing that drew me to the resource center. And the way the resource center was run back then was very, I don't want to say archaic, but it was really pencil and paper as opposed to spreadsheet and computers. The kind of bookkeeping they did on the floor for hours and all that stuff was just antiquated. So we had to really do a remake of the whole thing with the help of Cindy Phillips and Paul, obviously.
So you dive in there. What was your title?
Actually, it was the director of it was ProdCom, Production and Commercial Services, Director of Manufacturing and Commercial Services. So they used to do the acronym at the meetings, Director of ProdCom or something like that. And then about 2 or 3 years after that, we said, that's really a mouthful. How about just Director of Business Operations? Which is not really right either. It didn't have the finance side of things, but it was the outside business that I was responsible for.
At that time, when you walk in there, how many employees were assigned to Allied Industries?
Employees or production workers?
Well, production workers, I should say, because you
Production workers back then probably was, because Dunkirk was full, we had the second and third floor, I would say in the neighborhood of 450, 450, that'd be my guess. Nobody came full-time, so you never had 450 at one time, but a lot of people.
One of the as I recall, balancing acts you had to have is for funding purposes, the funding sources you had, the government contracts that you were able to get, was sort of the percentage of clients, who met the definition, and those that you could just be non-client definition.
Right. In the beginning, that wasn't a big concern because we weren't really doing many projects that required high-level production capabilities. And so it was really more like if a worker worked, and I don't remember the number exactly, but you had a quarter, and if they worked X number of hours, say 100 hours in a quarter, the resource center got X, some sort of money, and I don't remember the exact formula, but if they worked 99.5, the resource center got 0. And I really didn't understand, I wasn't coming from that world. The person that really back then was Gail Donis. She was director of rehab, and she was the one that kind of was responsible for getting the state funding monies in. And so she was the one that kind of schooled me on, if this person, you have to watch what each person is working, how many hours, and if you can get them to the magic number, whatever that was important for the resource center. The as we got more capable, as we started doing more and more production level, high-tech sewing and stuff for the special forces, load carriage for the special forces and that's when we had to think about our ratios of how many people were non-disabled. It's not people, by the way, it's hours. How many hours were worked in a quarter by non-disabled versus how many hours were worked by disabled. It has nothing to do with their productivity, it's just hours worked.
So I know that was a balancing act that you had to go through, and it was
Right.
sometimes difficult.
Very tough. At the end, well, not the end, but, about 5 years before I left, it became really crucial. It turned out we weren't reporting it correctly, and we didn't really understand it from a financial standpoint, from the finance standpoint. And it was probably my fault for not explaining it to them and not watching their systems. It was a systems thing is all it was. And we got out of whack for a while. But, there was, I don't want to say no harm, no foul, but we eventually got back in. It took us about a year and a half or so, but I think that's what it was. It's hard to remember.
1991, the Resource Center gained the national spotlight during the Gulf War. The U.S. Armed Services contracted with Allied Industries to produce 75,000 camouflage helmet covers for troops participating in Operation Desert Storm. Next, the U.S. Army Troop Support Command ordered air cargo bags, which are used to air-drop relief supplies to the Kurds. That was pretty heady time period.
Yeah, that was. I mean, that was I don't remember exactly why they started coming to us. I think it was, before that, there was a large order of insect bars, that's what we called them, but they were mosquito netting.
Yeah.
And we did it was an expedited order, and we did a real good job on it. And thanks to, Bob Schifano, who back then ran the production day-to-day stuff, they did such a great job. We got a little recognition within NISH. So we became a kind of a go-to organization. And so NISH is a funny animal. I mean, they're responsible as a go-between the government, federal government, and workshops like the Resource Center. But they don't get the work given to them to do if they don't get the job done. So being just human nature, if they find a place that does stuff well, they give them more work. And so I think that's what happened right before that. So we got the helmet covers, which technically was being done by a blind workshop in Texas, San Antonio Lighthouse. They couldn't handle the overflow. Nobody else in the NIB agencies could handle the overflow. So then NIB came to NISH and says, do you have anybody? And they came to us right away. And then right after that, we had another order, as I recall, but we had to give it up because they came in with another big order of insect bars. And so they took the helmet covers away and we got insect bars. But later on we did helmet covers again just because somebody needed help, So we became kind of a go-to organization thanks to the workers. I tell you what, when we were doing air cargo bags, we had people that never took a day off, like between October and the first of the year. I'm telling you, right through the holidays. They took Christmas and Thanksgiving and that's it. Worked every other day. And we had disabled workers working that much time. I mean, it was crazy times, man. Saturday, Sunday, 2 shifts, big deal.
Well, it was a big deal, and it brought a lot of attention to the Resource Center.
Mm-hmm.
And it raised the consciousness level an awful lot. And you were in the eye of that. And so in order to sort of manage that, because you couldn't see it coming, you can't say, going to have a strategic plan and...
That's the problem.
Yeah, and say, all right, Paul, here's what I think is going to happen in the next 5 years, so let's gear up. You had to react.
Yeah, it was really, it's a compliment to Paul and the board of directors, the first time we did the air cargo bag. That was really a leap of faith on their part. And in actuality, Bob Schifano said he didn't want me to take it. He says, don't do it, we're going to get killed. And we actually did, the first order. We got a small order, and I think we lost like $400,000 on it. And then we got another order, and we broke even. And then the third order, by then, we had worked out all the kinks, and we made very high return on investment, 25%. So, I mean, we really figured it out. It took a couple orders to figure it out. But the board of directors, we had to spend a lot of money back then to buy all the equipment and get it all set up. And I remember having pretty heated conversations in the boardroom with the board. There were a lot of them that didn't want to do it. But, I mean, I think Paul had faith in us, and, you know, it worked out. Yeah, Paul gave us a lot of freedom to make things happen, and we made them happen. And it turned out, most of the stuff we did turned out pretty well. Not everything, but most of it.
Well, you're in the areas which, you for a long period of time, and maybe still continue, Allied Industries, funded an awful lot of programs.
Oh, yeah, I don't know now, but yeah, we did.
Yeah, I mean, so that was such a pivotal part that you led. I don't want to, you know, obviously you give credit to the team, but it's, nevertheless, you had to work its way through some of the landmines. I was on the board at the time,
Yeah.
so I remember that, and because we had to get the funding to buy the equipment.
Sure.
I mean, that's where the rubble met the road.
Right,
They
right,
said,
right.
oh, we got a contract, but can we lose the contract any minute? Sure. And is this a roll of the dice? You bet.
Yeah.
But
It was interesting, and, I mean, and Steve was in a lot of the meetings, what's it called, directors meeting, I forgot, EMT meetings that we'd have, and they understood that we were kind of supporting everybody, and they said, we don't care what they do, as long as they just keep making money, because, I mean, let's face it, we were not the mainstream of the resource center in terms of how we went about things. We were a little different in, I don't want to say mavericky, but we were just a different animal as compared to the large residential programs and rehabilitation programs. So it was a different, you know, Nancy Ingram would say, I don't care, Greg, just keep doing what you're doing. Just keep doing what you're doing. You know, and we were lucky. We were very fortunate we did. We got a lot of good work out.
But with that came pressure.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they're looking to you, Greg, saying, all right, you're right now, you're the golden goose at this point, creating profit margin, which assists those deficit spending programs. So therefore, you had to deliver.
Budget time was interesting because we would, you know, make a forecast of what we think we're going to get next year, and we had some visibility, and we had some orders that carried over year to year, so you have an idea. But, you know, say you have 60% of your orders, you know what you're going to get, but you got 40% you don't. So naturally, I'm not saying we're going to make hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. I'm going to say we're going to make $10,000. And I would get corrected every year by finance and says, no, we're going to put X number of dollars in because we need that to balance our budgets. And it worked out. I mean, we always were busy. At the end, it wasn't always like that, and that's when we realized we needed to do things differently, some different things, trying to find our own product line, that kind of thing.
Part and parcel of the success was because of federal legislation.
Yes,
The Javits-O'Day Act.
Javits-Wagner-O'Day Act.
Javits-Wagner-O'Day, thank you. How did that work? Because it was a set-aside.
It was a set-aside. It was not a small business set-aside, but it was managed by the Small Business Administration. And it basically used the buying power of the federal government to employ the disabled, assuming you get the same quality, you get a competitive price, and the delivery that's required. And so there's three portions of that. You have the blind organizations, which were handled at the time under NIB, National Industries for the Blind. You had the National Industries for the Severely Handicapped, that was NISH's name, and then we had the prisons were part of that as well. So the prisons have a large manufacturing organization. They have companies that do injection molding. They're very, very sophisticated because they're dealing with 100% people all the time. So the blind are very sophisticated. And there's a lot of workshops like the Resource Center that are tremendously sophisticated, way more sophisticated than us. They do all kinds of things. But that's where it was basically just to use the buying power of the federal government to support, the term they used to use was special program for special people. That was the elevator speech.
You actually became a board member of NISH. I mean, you were a player.
Yeah, we did. I remember when they had the opening for, they had an organization that was below NISH called National Council of Work Centers, and the East Region, of which we're part of, the guy was retiring, and so I told Paul, I think he was president of NYSRA, is that the right term? At the time, and I said, you should run for this. I said, you're a shoo-in, and I said, it'll be good for us. And he said, no, you're going to run for this. And at the time, I had no idea what, but I won, and I was that for a while, and then I got on the NISH board as the East Region rep, and then I went into the officers track, so I ended up becoming chairman of the NISH
Yeah.
my latter years.
So we've kept your autograph. And that
Oh,
because of
yeah,
it.
no, it's very, very valuable.
But with that growth, again, became an expectation, and you couldn't always go like this. And so when all of a sudden things leveled off in the contract world, or just the needs, or because much of this was related to war, I hate to say it, but much of this was
Correct.
so those tent pins, insect bars, the helmet covers, all of that was because of service activity.
Correct, right. It started in the first Gulf War, was that 91?
Yep.
Yeah. And then when we started doing a development project for the Marine Corps on the individual first aid kit. It's called an IFAK, I-F-A-K. And we were working with the Marines, and they were trying different things and different packages, and because they said that, they told us that, and we were working with a Navy Cross medic out of Vietnam, a guy that's like in the Navy medical community, he's like a god, Tom Eagles, and he came to us and said, he says, we need this because if a person is alone and gets shot, they have the same chance of surviving in the Civil War as they do in the Gulf War. He says that's how bad the soldiers are given first aid equipment. Now, for medics there, that's different. But if you're by yourself, you're basically dead. And so basically what they wanted to do was give an infantryman, or the people on the ground, their own first aid kit that had sophisticated first aid supplies. And so we were working with them on the packaging and the design, and it was their designs, and we were just, try this, try this, try this. And so we got a call from them about, I want to say February 25th, they said, you're getting an order tomorrow for 18,000 IFAKs. And they've got to be done by March 21st. They're going to be shipped out of your place and air freighted March 21st. And we said, we haven't placed an order for any materials. We don't have anything. This is what you're going to do. And they said they needed them by the 21st. They were handing them to Marines as they crossed the Iraqi border on March 23rd. That's when they invaded. So we've had a pretty good inkling of when things were going to start over there. And so we got it done. We had everybody working on it. People stuffing the things, sewing. We worked like crazy for 3 weeks to get those done.
So what was your talent in sewing?
My talent in sewing was to make sure I didn't sew. And I one time went up and started helping packaging, and then Bob came up and said, somebody go through Bender's because they're probably mostly wrong. So I packaged a little bit. My son, Daniel, was like just out of high school and that, and he needed a job. Bob's daughter was just out of high school, needed a job. They went up, we hired them to stand at a table and stuff IFAKs all day long. We had a crew of probably 20, 30 kids doing that, just to get them done, so the sewers could sew.
Allied Industries, a name that they still use that, don't they? Allied Industries. But that was the manufacturing part. And then there's isn't it, the workshop, the old time workshop, worked with the Worley Industries and those things. Are they combined at some point?
It is confusing. It's always been confusing. In fact, when I started, Allied Industries really was they only called that one floor of the back of Jones and Gifford, initially. When did you start, Steve?
93.
So you were after me. So this is before his time, but Allied was tent pins. That's all it was.
Yeah.
And the other floors were second floor, third floor. Allied Industries, initially, we realized we had to market ourselves, so we tried to combine everything under Allied Industries. And at the time, we had no custodial business. We didn't have lawn care. We didn't have custodial. And so when we branched out into that, we made that part of Allied Industries as well. It morphed a couple times in different
So
things.
the workshop, as we would know it traditionally, is part of Allied Industries.
It's all part of Allied Industries, both places, Dunkirk. We had a place in Buffalo, remember? We had a workshop in Buffalo.
Gosh, that's right. That was through a grant, wasn't it? You got a grant, Paul got a grant. It seems to me that,
I think he did get some money from
O'Shea Foundation.
O'Shea
yeah,
Foundation.
that's it, yeah,
We were at the old Larkin building,
yeah.
but they were valuable when we started making IFACs. They really did a great job, and it was a joint effort with us and Heritage Centers out of Buffalo. So Buffalo supported them with the rehab services, and we supported the people with our manufacturing knowledge, and it was a joint effort. I mean, was it successful? Yeah, I mean, they just closed it a couple of years ago, didn't they?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it went 10 years probably, at least. But Allied was everything. But for a while, we tried to become TRC Tactical. Do you remember that? TRC Tactical was a marketing arm that we were trying to market our skills in the load carriage business to sell to other vendors other than the government. There's 100 people that make load carriage and sell load carriage, and we were trying to manufacture work, be a contract manufacturer for, I don't remember all the names. I'm lost. I just can't think of their names. But there's a ton of them that we were trying to get into that game because of the fluctuations. Because we would be busy as heck, and then we'd go to nothing, and then the budgets would take a hit, and then we'd get more work, and we might have to spend another, $100,000 on different equipment or new equipment, and we're back up and going crazy again. And so it was because we didn't control our own destiny. Eventually, Paul and I realized that we needed to find a business line of our own, and that's kind of where Support Enterprises came out of. That was part of the logistics of starting up that, and I think it was somewhat successful. I don't think we ever could really get a home run with any product, though. They were all small contracts, nothing like for the government. Obviously, the governments, they pay, and they pay well. They pay on time. And if they don't pay, they pay interest. People say, hate to work for the government. There's some problems, but their money is awfully good.
Yeah, and they know how to get it.
Yeah.
Well, this, right here at the Kappa Theater, the Carl Kappa Theater, we'll talk about in just a second, was the home of an event called the Woodstock, the Music of the First Amendment. And we had a continuing education program for the community. 200 people showed up. And it was honoring Woodstock Music Festival. And we insisted that everybody who came in here was adorned with a tie-dye shirt.
Oh, wow.
Brought to you by Support Enterprises.
Yeah, that's
And
cool.
that was it was a great show. So we had guys from Woodstock, Three Dog Night. I mean, we had a whole bunch of people. They all wore
That's
the
cool.
tie-dye shirts. And I don't think that guys don't do that stuff anymore. But it was an effort, as you were talking about, trying to find something niche
Yeah.
to avoid that diversity or to create that diversity rather.
It's a tough, we've always been able to make, I don't want to say anything, but in our business line, in our sewing, and we always could figure out a way to make almost anything. What we never could figure out is how to sell it. If somebody didn't come to us, we just were never successful at it. There are agencies that are very, very good at selling. We just never were, we never could, we hired salespeople. Ian, can't remember his name. Remember Ian?
I know who you're talking about, but I can't remember the name either.
Ian Stout. Ian Stout, Joe Trimbley, great. I mean, they knew what they were doing. Just didn't work.
I remember Joe, but Joe was part of that. Sure.
His daughter just got married.
Was there?
Yeah.
We're in the Kappa Theater. One of the most important things as far as the visibility of the Resource Center was the Carl Kappa Classic Golf Tournament.
No question.
And as a prelude conversation to that, one of the things that was always struggled with as I was on the board and a variety of things, trying to get the community to understand who we were so that we'd go from negative to at least neutral, and then hopefully positive, because when you have as many employees as you had at Allied, it creates a huge economic impact. Yeah, not everybody appreciated that.
No, there's no question. They didn't understand.
Yeah. And we tried gimmicks, $2 bills, that's another story. Watch my interview, I'll tell you, you can listen to the $2 bill story.
I remember it.
Merrill Rosen. Anyways, we digress. But Carl Kappa. Carl, who was not on the board, but nevertheless had family members really through the relationships with Joe Caprino, who were developmentally disabled, was always encouraging. And yet, all of a sudden, magic happened. And you were in the middle of that, kind of at the beginning. Could you talk about sort of that?
Yeah, there were at the time, it's 26 years ago, so whatever date that is.
Wow.
Because we're having our 25th this year, and it was supposed to be last year. I believe the impetus was Sam Restivo. My understanding in talking, Sam went to Carl and says, I want to have a golf tournament. To digress a little bit, Sam was also St. Peter and Paul Parish had a golf tournament. There were golf tournaments that were small in stature, but fundraisers. Sam was part of the St. Peter and Paul effort with Gene Madden and Vince Regan and, names from the community in the past. And so I think that was the impetus for Sam. He went to Carl and says, Carl, I want to put your name on a golf tournament for the Resource Center. And Carl, I think he jumped in with both feet. Mm-hmm. If he had 3 of them, he jumped in with 3 feet. He was gung-ho, and it was his tournament. Make no mistake about it. Sam might have been the chairman. Carl was the boss. We all understood that. I go back a long ways with Carl. I used to play golf with Carl when I was a young kid up at Moonbrook. And I played with Carl several times. So I knew him. I didn't know him great, but I knew him. And I knew Sam. And so, and Paul obviously knew I was a golfer. Paul said, Greg, you're going to be on this committee. I said, oh, okay, no problem. And I love it. I mean, we did a great job. Patsy Dodge. Who else was on the original committee? I can't even think now. But it was good. We did good work.
Yeah, and I was there for the first couple of years, and what I was impressed with was it clearly was Carlson. There's no question. And we would meet at the Caprino building down there in that boardroom, and Carl would be at the end of the table.
Yep.
My recollections, and he'd pass out assignments just to people to give sponsors.
Yep.
And I'll never forget probably one of the first report meetings, and people were reporting as to their calls, and somebody said, well, I talked to so-and-so, and they're not going to do it this year. Who's that again, Carl?
Yeah.
Who's that? Do we have a phone here? So phone. Next thing, he's on the phone, and in front of everybody. He said, hey, Carl, hey, so-and-so, and I won't mention his name. I understand you got an invitation and you're taking a pass this year. I really hope you strongly reconsider.
Yeah.
And of course, immediately got $1,000,
Oh,
boom,
yeah.
boom, boom. But he took it personal, man.
Oh, he did. Another story very similar to that. We were at a meeting, and we had always tried to get, who's the Delphia Cable people, Theophylactides was, I can't remember their name. They had two sons.
Regus.
Regas, yeah. Mr. Regas, Carl and him had met at other things, and Carl was mentioning it. And I said, Carl, we ought to think about getting him that's a good idea. We ought to do that. He called him up, get $10,000 like it was nothing. And then the next year, we hadn't heard anything. Same thing, Carl just got on the phone and said, what was his name?
John.
John Regas, yeah, Regis. Anyways, he was like that. I mean, and he didn't understand why the Resource Center wasn't like that. He says, the Resource Center's got a lot of clout. You guys should be exactly the same way. We never were. We aren't now, I'm sure. It wasn't part of the Resource Center's philosophy in order to get donations. But it's been a great event for showing the people what the Resource Center is about. We have our Special Olympic golfers that come up and do a contest. Last year, 2 years ago, we had Special Olympic players actually playing in the whole tournament.
No kidding.
We're going to do that this year, so. Yeah, it's been a great event. I was fortunate. I was on the first committee, and when Sam retired, Paul asked me to take it over, and I did. And then my next to the last year, I said, I'm going to be going here pretty soon. Somebody else got to take it over. So right now, Chris Anderson's the chairman. He does a great job. This year's event's July
26.
26th. I was going to say 28th, but I think you're right. I think it's the 26th. We put it off because of the COVID. We wanted to have as much chance to have a normal event as we can. I still think it's probably going to be a hybrid of some sort, but we'll make it work. It'll be fine.
Well, actually, one year, because every year you're iconic, and that one year you raised $100,000.
I think a couple, 3 years.
Really?
Yeah. A couple, 3 years in a row, we netted over $100,000 profit. We always said you go to a lot of golf tournaments. Used to play in a lot of golf tournaments, and you would get a golf ball and a bag of tees, and that's what the player. But Sam and Carl's philosophy was, this is going to be a first-class event. We're going to give good prizes out. We're going to spend money to make money, and that was their philosophy, and that's what our philosophy's been all along.
I remember you would roll up those trucks, and next thing you know, you got golf shoes.
Golf shoes, bags, yeah. Hybrids? Did we get you a hybrid?
Absolutely. In fact, I dogged him, 'cause
Yeah, I had to pull one out of my hat.
it worked.
But it's a great event, and how much longer I'm going to be part of it doesn't really matter. I think it's got a great foothold. Chris does a great job. They got to find a couple more people that work for the Resource Center to buy into it. I mean, I was the person, obviously. When I started working at the Resource Center, Paul played golf once a year. If you looked at his trunk by the time he left, he had golf clubs, golf shoes, golf jacket, rain jacket, umbrellas. He was a golfer.
That's
He
right.
became a golfer. We played all the time. But there's nobody besides Chris that is a golfer. They need to find some new blood from the organization to make it, to give it some more longevity, because my son left. He left work in the Resource Center. He's still on the committee, but that's not the same. You need to have somebody that's a champion that works there. So hopefully they'll do that.
Well, it is incredible. What you've accomplished, Craig, is beyond remarkable, because you think of the number of Monday tournaments at Moonbrook, which, are numbers, there's a lot of them, but they're lucky if they make 10 grand, 20 grand. and
Right, yeah, we really set the bar pretty high.
Way high.
Yeah, I mean, for our area, for our rural area, yeah, Buffalo has tournaments that make 300,000-400,000, but that's Buffalo. Jamestown's not a affluent area, so I think we've done very well cultivating the sponsors that we have. Obviously, the initial one was Carl, because if he didn't like the numbers, he'd put more money into it. That was his philosophy. When he passed away, we lost a great champion. That just made us work a little harder, Unfortunately, he left too soon, but that's the way life is.
you knew you were coming in today, because I asked you.
Yeah.
And you're driving up here and you'd say, I wonder what Greg's gonna ask, and your mind is working in overdrive, and what's the question I haven't asked you yet?
You know what? Steve probably knows me, you know me. I'm pretty laid back. I really wasn't worried. I really didn't have any that, I was worried I wouldn't remember stuff. But, you know, it starts clicking back, and I'm sure I might have forgotten some things that I probably should have, but, no, I think we did good work while we were there, no question. We were lucky, we were in the right place, the right time, but you still got to do a good job, and we did a good job. And that's what really, you know, we were not afraid to take a chance. Paul wasn't afraid to take a chance. We tried the Andy's Cafe, because that was a place where we thought we could put employees, disabled employees working there. And we could, and we did. What we couldn't handle was the finance of a restaurant in a business like the Resource Center. One's cash, one's not cash. They don't go. The print shop was fine. We did okay in the print shop until we lost our space. So, I mean, we tried a lot of different things, and always trying to figure out a way to employ more disabled workers in the community. But it's a tough gig. There's no question.
Do you miss it?
It's the people. I mean, you know, I haven't been back on the floor in 5 or 6 years. I think I went back when I came back from Alaska, now that I think about it, for somebody's birthday. But I haven't been back on the floor in 5 or 6 years. Maybe someday I'll take a walk through. Somebody will give me a tour.
Speaking of giving tours, you gave tours, and some notables would come in to the area, and
Right.
inevitably, the poster child for Chautauqua County unique businesses was Allied Industries. And it would become a headlines, and you'd get this contract, that contract. So people wanted to touch it, and it became a photo op. Do you remember a few notables that came walking through?
We had all of the state representatives at various times. Kathy Young was a great supporter, and she loved going through the place. We had Brian Higgins. When Tom Reed first took over, that was one of his first things. We never could get Hillary. We tried to get Hillary to come up when she was a senator. We never could get Hillary. And I don't think Schumer's been here, has he? I think we had his person once. That's his best. We've had several generals. And until you see a general walking around with a bunch of colonels running after him, it's just the most amazing thing. They're like little gods that are walking around, and they have these little people that are just minions taking care of them. It's really, but it was always a pleasure to do it. They're such impressive people.
Yeah.
You know, you don't get to be a general by accident. If there's a bad general, there's not many of them. I mean, they're really pretty sharp individuals, and we were fortunate to meet quite a few. Now I know that a full bird colonel is better than a lieutenant colonel and all that. I know all the ranks now. I didn't know anything 35 years ago.
Remember Tom DiNapoli came in, the comptroller?
Oh, yeah, I met him. That's right, we gave him a tour.
Yeah, we gave him a tour, and we did an interview with him.
Steve probably remembers better than me. I mean,
Well, you know, the one thing, Greg, we touched on a little bit with the first aid kits and how you got those ready so quickly. A couple months later, some Marines from Quantico came up to personally thank the workers.
Yeah,
because of those first aid
they
kits.
came around, walked on the floor, and we suggested they wear their uniforms because the people love the uniform. We would get special forces people that would come, and they'd look like people off the street. They you know, beards, and I mean, an interesting story. If you recall, when we first invaded Afghanistan, it was at night, and you could see the lights of the plane and the people dropping out of the sky, landing on things. One of the sergeants that was on that plane came to our, and we met him. Very impressive. It was really the stories they told us. And some of the projects we did that Steve doesn't know about, that we did for them on the sly. We did some carrying sacks for 55-gallon drums, 30-gallon drums, I don't know what millimeter artillery cartridges, but they were made to carry certain, shall I say, chemicals that, and they said, if anybody ever comes here, don't ever show them this, don't ever tell them you're doing this. I mean, that doesn't happen anymore, I'm sure, but we've met a lot of really good people that were in the services, and they were very impressive.
So here he is, right there.
Yeah, I think, Greg, too, when the Marines came in, talk about the sense of importance that the production workers felt to know that these guys are coming in.
Oh,
and
yeah.
the stuff that they're seeing the products that they made on television overseas on the nightly news.
Yeah, they would see the IFACs hanging off the Marines' backpack or whatever, and
wow.
they would talk about it the next day, and then when they came through, they got interviewed by, I can't remember who came around and interviewed the workers, but they were just excited to tell the people how proud they were to, it was the New York Times guy for the air cargo bag, wasn't it? Well, I don't remember his name, but they did a big article on the air cargo bag, and we were in the New York Times. At the time, that was the largest order ever given to a not-for-profit. I'm sure it's been passed by now, but it was, I don't know, $16 million or something. What I'd be interested in finding out someday is, when we started doing government work, what's our total now? It's got to be big. I mean, we did over $50 million several years in a row in just government work. Be interesting to know all the orders that we've done, what the total amount is. I mean, I would bet it's got to be close to $500,000. Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. Remember,
$500 million.
Around 2000 or so, we had a big ceremony because we had reached $50 million in total sales to the government, total work to the government.
Yeah.
Since when we started in 77, 78. And that was like in 2000.
And the very next year, we did $50 million.
Right.
I mean, it was crazy how big it was. But anyways,
Exploded.
no, I think you did a good job, Gregory.
Well, what you talk about, that 50 million, because everybody was the beneficiary of being able to say, because when that was added to the other revenue sources you got to 100 million.
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
you got to be toasting me.
Yeah.
The Resource Center, $100 million.
108 or something like that, a couple years ago.
Yeah, there's-
Yeah, and people, I think the thing that the golf tournament, not to get the two together, but the people didn't understand those big orders. They would see those big orders, and then they'd say, why do they need money? Well, they didn't understand until we got out in the community and started explaining it, how it worked. That money was, you buy the materials, you do the labor. That's just, no, somebody's not giving you $50 million or $20 million. You're doing work for it. And a lot of people didn't understand that in the community. And I think by getting out into the community with the golf tournament and other golf tournaments and other events, I think that's helped a tremendous amount.
Well, you get the money in and you spend it in the community.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about an economic engine.
Oh, yeah, for sure. We did that study too, didn't we?
A couple of them, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that was critical to become, this is a terrible term to use, normalized in the business community.
Right. No, that's right. It's a big business. It was the third largest employer in the county at one time. I don't think it is now, probably, but how many people do you have working now?
Altogether, it's probably still around 1,400.
See, it was almost 2 back in the day. I mean, close to 2,000, so.
When you, and this we've done after a few interviews, it's just a reflection here, but we were blessed at the time to have a Mike Raymond.
Yes.
I mean, launch. Blessed at a time to consider the Article 28 clinics, which distinguished
Right,
this place.
right.
Blessed to have somebody with the foresight to create an allied industries at a level, just a seed plant, and then to have the government contracts and to have a guy like Greg Bender you know, take full advantage of the Javits, Wagner, O'Day Act and how that launched us. Because once you get to that point, you have an Article 28. Nowadays, it's always been an Article 28. You forget how difficult it was
That was tough.
to get, and you
Yeah.
couldn't get it today if you wanted to.
Yeah, right, right,
And Allied Industries, if you started from scratch today, you couldn't.
right. Doesn't exist.
And Lord knows, we would not have launched from a small mom-and-pop shop on Third Street, by, Todd Patrick's Jamestown Stamp Company.
Lawn and Garden Center.
Yeah.
That's
there
what,
yeah.
Garden, Garden. I went there.
Oh, did you?
I was an industrial engineer at AVM at the time.
Yeah.
And I can't remember the number, but the of automatic voting machines, I was an industrial engineer, and we had two sizes of rivets. And to the naked eye, you couldn't see the difference. And the manufacturer sent us them mixed. And we bought them by the millions. So we had like 100,000 that were mixed. And the guy said, I can't get you any more, get them sorted. Stuart Baldwin was the guy's name
Yeah.
at the Lawn and Garden Center that I talked to. And I brought them up, and we gave them a fixture, and they hand sorted all of them for us. It was a godsend. That was that was 1975? I'm just guessing, I don't really know, to be honest. 74 maybe, something like that.
Mike would have either just come on or been kind of that Jim DePonso.
When did they open the Jones and Gifford? When was that?
76?
So it was probably 75, 74? That was my first time I had ever been involved with and somebody at work said, the Resource Center, or no, what did they call it back then?
Achievement Center.
I think it was the Achievement Center, or it could have been the Arc, I'm not sure, one or the other. They said down at the Lawn and Garden Center, they might sort them for you.
Yeah, and that was, yeah. So you just think about time and place on a lot of this and big picture stuff. We were blessed. And then to have Paul come right after Mike and created calm the chaos.
Uh-huh,
And,
that's for sure.
but nevertheless, very methodical and business and strategic and,
Yep.
and a growth spurt, not like this, which nothing could be sustained with that time period with Raymond.
Right.
I mean, he was, incredible, but that had to stop. And then, Paul kept it but it kept going.
It was more incremental.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it was, and of course Denise is continuing that. Yeah, this has been fun for all of us to do.
Yeah, kind of interesting to try to remember stuff
Yeah.
that you forget about, but yeah, I appreciate the invite.
Well, you're a star, man.
I don't know about that, but I was the right person at the right time, I guess.
Well, you were, and I appreciate it. Any other questions?
The only other thing, just to talk a little bit more about the impact of the golf tournament, which I think has netted 1.7 million
Just under, I think.
over
yeah.
the years.
Yeah.
Whoa.
And then you think about, filling the gaps that Incorporated, which exists to support the Resource Center and raise money and gives out grants every year, give out $100,000 through the funds that we have at the Chautauqua Region Community Foundation. And, that money that's able to go out is almost exclusively due to what's come in through the golf tournament. The other events we do bring in some money, but nothing like that.
Yeah, I mean, we worked, I don't want to say we didn't work hard, but we didn't work any hard, like the Laurel Run. I mean, that's a lot of work. Laurel Run was a lot of work, and I felt so bad because we would fall into money, and they'd be struggling to make, or the old basketball tournament. The amount of work they had to do to get $15,000 was crazy. It was just a different animal, and we were fortunate that we had Carl and Sam and to get it going, and we kind of kept it on an even keel the whole way. I had a conversation with you about this that you probably don't remember. Probably, it was after Carl died, you and I talked about it, and you said, Greg, everything has a life cycle. You're going to have to think about that. That's not going to last forever. 25 years ain't bad.
No, it's remarkable.
Yeah.
And, yes, things do have life cycles, but this has got a long,
It's a long one. Hopefully it goes another 25.
Yeah.
Because it's money well spent within the community.
Well, what's remarkable, and that's a tribute to the Resource Center and its staff, and you as a leader, but often things have a personality that, and they're based on a personality, in this case, Carl.
Yeah.
And other, where there is an organization which has its founder, and then all of a sudden that founder dies, fades away, does something, the energy level is then reduced.
Right.
And that's when it starts less and less and less, and at some point you have to acknowledge it's over. I mean, that's normal. This is not normal.
Yeah.
And this is abnormal, and that's a credit. I mean, this is really a success story to have survived that format. And I'm sure that was where I was coming from.
Yeah.
Because I've seen it at other things.
Oh, yeah. How many fundraisers have we all been part of that don't exist now?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the Community Foundation, Frank Farrell's. I mean, it's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
But we've been lucky, but we've got a good reputation, I think, too. I think that's has a lot to do with it.
Well, it's, you've been able to transform it from the name of a Carl Kappa Golf Classic. People generically know that, but it's reality. It's the Resource Center Golf Classic. So it's
Right.
institutionalized.
I hear you.
And that's what's to your credit.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, no question. Well, appreciate you, Greg. Thanks for coming in.
Not a problem.
Okay, you don't mind us selling your autograph to you?
You know, just give me a cut, that's all. If you think you can get money for it, take it all. Nobody's ever asked me for one, I don't think.
For your autograph?
I don't
Well,
think.
we got it on the thing. That's why we got it, you know?
I got yours.
You got mine?
When you got inducted to the Hall of Fame, I had the Little League program that, from when we were kids, and you autographed it for me.
Nice.
I got that. I don't have it framed, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, yeah.
And you're an autograph guy, so
I am an autograph
you're
guy.
an autograph guy.
Yeah.